to another interview in our FM Expert series. Today I'm joined by Chris Moriarty. Hi Chris, good to see you.
Hello, you right?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Chris is the Director of Insight and Engagement at IWFM. And Chris, you are going to share with us some thoughts around the workplace opportunity for the profession, but you're also going to, obviously because of COVID, look at how that potentially has changed things and impact things. So I am going to hand over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. People have probably seen me at some point over the last 2 years talk about the workplace opportunity, and that was obviously very connected to our name change back in 2018. And it's been a period that has been very exciting for us, but obviously with COVID coming in, I think there's attention has switched to the here and now. But I still think that there's a huge opportunity for the workplace mindset to actually drive us forward. And it's actually some of the bits that have come through just recently have been very much in that kind of sphere of discussion. So yeah, I think it's a great time for us, albeit in circumstances none of us would have hoped for, to start showing the profession in a slightly different light. So shall I give you a bit of a potted history? I'll tell you a little bit about the work we're doing now, and then maybe some of the learnings. So we have always, when we were talking about workplace and the workplace opportunity before any of this talk that I gave, which you can, if you want to see it, there's some of them on YouTube actually. I've been very lucky, some of these conferences that record it for you. But it was talking about a shift in focus for us as a profession. It wasn't really about the label that you put above it. Albeit I do make the argument in some of those talks that actually the label is important, because to people outside, they want something very clear and obvious about what it is that you do. But what it's about is putting people at the center of it. Now, we've always talked about FM being a people business, a people industry. But I do think actually when you look at that and you analyze it and you go under the surface, I'm not sure everyone is clear on what that means. They know what it means to them when they say that. But I think at a community level, if you asked everyone to then explain what that meant, you would see it in different manifestations. And I think that's part of the problem, because we've got two things. We've got an industry which employs lots of different people doing lots of different things, that supplies into a profession that has a role and the purpose within an organization. And there is a kind of Venn diagram where the two things cross over. You've got some of those practitioners are in outsourced service providers. Yeah,
that's it. It's interesting, the industry and profession thing, because there's lots of different schools on thought on it, isn't it? So, okay, I'm interested in that. Go on then. Yep.
So I think when the industry talks about us being a people profession, what they are talking about is that it's people delivering it. It's real people delivering for other real people, and that sense of community. The building is the context again, but it's driven by the people. Actually, the profession, I believe, when we talk about we are a people-orientated business, it's that this is our product. Our product is employee experience, not a functioning building, a maintained building, because they really should be steps towards an employee experience, not the end in itself. And I think we've got to be very clear as a sector, and that's the kind of catch-all that I use for this, as a sector, what the differences are between a professional discipline and an industry that supports it. Now, what Workplace was always about was focusing on the practitioner, in the sense that this is about building up a professional profile, a discipline, a set of competencies that is delivering on what organizations are saying that they need. Anthony Slumbers, who spoke at our conference last year, very, very outspoken, publicly facing guy, he said that, one of his slides is, people don't want productive buildings, they want a productive workforce. That's what they want. But we haven't really focused on that in a true way. We talk about it, we're very good at talking about it at conferences and webinars like this and lots of different forums, but have we changed what we do to make that, to deliver on that promise? So for me, that was what Workplace Opportunity was in the last 2 years, and we've been building up as an institute a narrative around that. We've been building up some evidence around that. We're moving now, in the last year, we've started putting some skill development into that, because then COVID happens, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of really good news stories that came out about FM as a big label across those two elements,
Yeah.
about their response.
Yeah.
And that was right. Our community was critical in getting people out of buildings, into homes, and doing it in a rapid way. So that was certainly good. We're going to be critical doing the reverse of that.
Yeah.
There are some amazing stories, and we've just launched an awards category specifically for this, about things like Nightingale and how and below the surface. That's the headlines, but actually you hear about these places where they've transitioned a space that can no longer be used for the public, but now it's going to be, sort of house NHS staff, and whilst they're working and stuff. So there's a lot of that, but I do think that underneath all that, we've missed another opportunity to say, actually, what we can be as a professional discipline within organizations, we can be at the frontier of work as it inevitably evolves, and we can adapt the organization to that. And that doesn't mean about adapting the building. And I think that's where we've focused our attention. Yeah. It's not about putting screens and tape down. Yeah. It's not about putting hand sanitizer everywhere. But we've got to start thinking about, what does work look like, and how do we as an organization support that work in the future, which is about partnering up with HR, which is about looking at real estate questions. I think, I seriously believe that our profession is the best placed group of people to talk about what real estate decisions we should be taking, as opposed to waiting for someone else to decide what building we're getting.
And I think too many operational people don't necessarily get a voice or get a seat at the table when it comes to that. But I completely agree. Okay, sorry, I interrupted your flow. Go on.
Well, no, it's fine. No, it's very good interrupting my flow, because if you want to keep this in 10 minutes, I would absolutely recommend doing that. So that for me was the big opportunity. So so there's a few things that we've been doing during this period. So we've done a lot of work about supporting the profession and getting there's so much guidance out there. We tried to signpost it, but we wanted to explore, okay, so what's going on in employees' new world and their new experience, and kind of making the point that this is the sort of work that we need to do to help us shape our value to the organization, as opposed to thinking, what we need to do is make our building COVID safe. That for me is something that will come afterwards. So we asked employees. So we went out, we did a survey of about 1,000 people twice, and that number goes down because we sort of filter out the people that we really want to speak to in that group. But we talked to people who worked in offices, because we focused on that because it's slightly easier. Worked in offices but are now working from home in COVID. And we asked loads of things about their experiences and how they found it and what's happening, but also attitudes about their future work. So what we found is that there's kind of a split in people wanting to get back into work, back into the office, back into the corporate space. About 50% of people did want to come in, 20% or so didn't feel comfortable coming back. And then there was a sort of a group that made up the difference, that were kind of neutral to the whole thing. Now that's when we asked them in April. When we asked them in June, we found that the people that wanted to come back had dropped. So that, I think it went down to about 40%. The people that were worried about coming back had increased, and the neutral kind of stayed around the same. So this is what's been feeding a lot of these headlines that we're getting about, we have a real estate company that's commissioned a survey that says everyone wants to get back into the office. And I think, again, Anthony Slumbers kind of characterized that as Pope advocates Catholicism. And then you've got the other group saying, no, everyone wants to come back, work from home, says a company that specializes in digital communications. So we wanted to try and provide a kind of independent voice into that, because we've got no real preference, because actually for us this is about supporting work wherever it happens. But we went a layer underneath it, and there's some really, really, really interesting things that are going on. For instance, the people who really want to get back into the office are typically 18 to 24-year-olds, are working on a sofa or in a bed. And it kind of makes sense. There is a horrible experience for them. They can't concentrate. They're more likely to report problems with mental health during this period. They feel lonely. They're working less hours, and they're finding it hard to separate their day. And at the other end of the bell curve, you've got people like myself and by you, by the looks of things, that have a room with a door, with a kit, and they're saying, no, I don't need to go back into the office. Actually, I've done some really great work in the meantime. Now, this is a 40-minute presentation of data which people can go and find online, but we what it highlights is that there is a nuanced debate about it, and it will not be solved by blanket kind of, here's how you come back into our building. It's actually a stage before that where we go, why are you coming back into this building? Who's going to come back first? And when they do come back, what is the value proposition of the space that we've created? Because what COVID has done, and I know a lot of people are kind of, you know, when you go on Twitter and you get all the different voices, and there's, you know, you sense this sort of frustration that there are a group of people who get frustrated that there's even a debate about what the new normal is. And they say, well, you know, you're asking a survey during a crisis, of course the data is going to be skewed. This has changed people's perceptions. You know, we cannot get away from the fact that up until, I found some ONS data, up until January like this year, I think it was 23 million people that worked in corporate space hadn't worked from home. And then
23 million.
Yeah, something like it's something incredible, like 70% of the working population. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a huge amount. The problem is with this home working thing is that people that talk about home working versus office working and all this sort of stuff tend to be people that do home working, right? As opposed to people that are in very functional roles that are used to a 9 to 5, go in and out of a building every day, have got a very fixed idea of work. It's those people that we've picked up and said, by the way, you can't come in anymore. And they've gone for 3 months at home, working away. And it's been a sort of hit and miss situation. It might strengthen some people's view that it's very difficult to work from home. But actually, a lot of people have started reporting and saying, actually, no, it's fine. Actually, I'm getting into the swing of things now, and reporting benefits, more time with the family, less money on commute, less time wasted in trains. You know, I do miss my commute slightly because it's when I get to listen to podcasts. I realized that the other day. I looked at all the podcasts I haven't listened to. There's about 60, 70 in that 3-month period episodes. And that's because I'm not driving anywhere. So I think as a profession, we need to start recognizing that in the same way that the marketing profession would look at a community of people and go, what's happening out there? What environmental changes have happened? What have attitudes done? How do we respond to those attitudes? And how do we bring a value to those new perceptions? And I think as workplace and facilities professionals, that's our opportunity to look at that group and go, this is my workforce. How do we support that workforce? What do we do differently? How's the environment change? What's the sentiment change? How do we segment that audience so that we know which levers to pull? And that, for me, lies at the crux of the problem that we've had, going right back to what we said at the start. We're a people industry, we're a people profession. We don't measure people. So the two things don't make sense to me. So I did a really cool experiment just recently. Before all this happened, I was doing a lunch and learn. And I was talking about the workplace opportunity, and I was pulling some data from all sorts of places. And some people know I used to work for Leesman, so they had lots of data on this stuff. And I thought, I'm going to have a little playful experiment. So at the start of the presentation, I planted a slide, and a slide that came from one of our IWFM reports when we changed our name that we did with 3 Edges. I planted a slide that said, right, on a spectrum where one end of it is the profession is about managing space where work happens, and the other end of the spectrum is we're about enabling work wherever it has to happen. Where are we, right? And we saw in the survey that we did, we saw it leaning towards enabling work wherever it has to happen, this kind of very fluid idea of supporting work. And I asked that audience there. Now everyone puts their hands up because they know that's the right answer. They're like, oh no, that's exactly what we should be doing. Yeah, we're about enabling work. We're not bound by the building. We'll do that. Cool, great. And then I went on one and talked about lots of different things. I then brought in towards the tail end of that presentation some stuff about Leesman, and I said, for those who haven't seen it, it's a way of measuring the effectiveness of workspace in the context of supporting work. So it asks people, what work do you do first, and then about how the physical and the service environments support that. And it has that question that, do you agree or disagree that your workplace enables you to work productively? So I thought, all right, I'll throw that stuff in because it has a great shock factor because it isn't good enough. The aggregated data isn't good enough because, we're only still, I think it peaks at 60% of the workforce still like their workplace supports them. Criminal, But I asked them that question, and then I said, and there was shock and shaky heads and all that sort of stuff. And I said, right, so how many people in this room right now know what activities their staff do when they're in their working environments? And how many people know how well their workplace is supporting their effectiveness? And there was just 2 people put their hands up. And it was a room of 40. 2 people put their hands up because they'd just done it. When I introduced Leesman and said, oh yeah, we're doing a pilot with them at the moment. That was it. And then I pointed to the fact, well, hold on a minute, because 20 minutes ago, you told me you're about enabling work. You said that's what your raison d'etre is, but you're not measuring work. So talk me through that, because the two things don't stack up. And I think that's the elephant in the room for our profession, which is we talk about supporting work, we talk about productivity, we talk about being people orientated, we talk about creating communities and experience, but we're not measuring it.
Yeah.
And when we start measuring it, when we start obsessing about it, and start putting the cost, the space, the hard technical data about HVAC systems and all this stuff, it's all important in the context of the people experience. So, and that's the lesson for me in the moment.
Yeah, I know, and I think that's a pretty enormous lesson, actually. And I think a lot of people listening to this will be going ding ding with little ideas. But we're on about 16 minutes. I knew we had no hope of sticking to 10 minutes. Can you give me and the people listening something tangible then to, if people are going, actually, no, I like the sound of that, you're right. Yeah. What can they do? Give us some tangible things they could try and put in place.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to do is work out mechanisms for engaging with employees that go beyond rate our service, because it's assuming that the service is right in the first place. So let's try and be a bit more sophisticated in those conversations. And, you know, if you've got budget, then go out and find, you know, these organizations that can do it. You know, Leesman's one of them. There are some other organizations that can help with that. There are, you know, some of the service providers and the real estate guys have their own tools, which don't often get used because there's normally an additional charge. And I think, you know, we're in a cost sensitive environment. But if you can't do that, there's nothing wrong with approaching your HR department to say, look, if ever there was a time to do a more sophisticated question exercise, it is now, because so much has changed. We need to get under the skin of it. And I think we need to move away from this idea that the employee engagement survey will have one question about your working environment. So let's use this opportunity to go in and ask some questions about how we can support work, what we need support with, how they're feeling, what the experience is shaping in terms of work, in terms of what's difficult for them, what's less difficult for them, what they look to do in the future, and start building up a profile, a segmented profile, because not everyone in your organization will be the same, whether you use demographic segments about age, you know, or you use organizational ones about department or seniority, whatever it is you want to use. Start building up these personas and these profiles. Start thinking about how you're going to support that in the future. And then in the long term, think about work. Think about how we support work, not as once you're in our building. Think about how we support work, period. You know, our responsibility doesn't start and stop at the revolving door. Yeah, people now up and down the country in their spare rooms, in their offices, who need that support. And I think we're the profession to give it to them. Yeah,
I completely agree. But I also think there's a piece around articulating what the team do and the services they provide, because I think some operational teams going to HR or to the business asking these sorts of questions, they'll go, yeah, but you look after the cleaning and the catering and the security. So it's actually, I think the communication piece has also got to be about what do we offer, what do we provide, and then they're not surprised if we're asking those questions, you know.
Absolutely. And the stuff exists. Stoddart Review, you know, it was specifically designed for that purpose. We've got some free resources. We've got a pack of resources about creating better workplaces. So something that we've done in partnership with Rico, where we've developed these one-off guides that all work as a series, but the guides are like creating your workplace vision, selling your workplace ideas to leadership. You know, so there's some the resources are out there. We just need to find them. But you're right, because we need to start going to leadership to say, here's why what I'm about to say is important.
Exactly.
You know, regardless of what you think about me. And this goes right back to where we started. Language is important. If we talk operational, they'll treat us as operational. So you're right, and the resources are out there.
Yeah, and I wonder with the resources if it's worth IWFM doing a bit more active sharing of those, because we know that people don't always go and find. You know, so maybe just throwing them out again, saying, by the way, you know. explain and articulate what it is you do and the amazing role you're doing, use some of these guides.
Yeah, so there's a few things, you know, absolutely, and I can share the links with you afterwards so that they're available, but also keep an eye out because the next webinar but one, I think, is looking at that specifically, so we're focusing on those guides. And the other bit of work that we're doing at the moment is we're working with Liverpool John Moores University to see if we can come up with a model that's got some finance in there, but some people metrics to look at return on these workplaces and the value they create for organizations. So yeah, lots of work to do. The job never stops.
Good. Well, we will share those links so people will be able to see those, but we're over 20 minutes, but I think that was super value. So Chris, I am going to say thank you very much for your time, for your insight, and also for reminding people that some of those great resources are out there. So thank you.
Yeah, no bother at all.